Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are here at the very first Scrappy Systems with Darnell Brown. Welcome, Marge. Welcome, Alice, Sam. It's lovely to see you here. Please take a moment to settle in, grab some water, get comfortable. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. I just want to go over some house rules, but I'm very excited for today's session. While you wait, please feel free to let's get to know each other. Drop your location in the chat. Tell us why you're here, how you found out about us, and if you want, you can even pop your LinkedIn in the chat as well. Let's do some connecting. That's what these kind of events are all about. So just so you know who I am, my name is Candice. I am the founder of Candid Community and a marketing strategist. And today I am here because Candid Collab is sponsoring this videocast series, basically because it runs a community where solopreneurs can get marketing, product, and e-learning support on a budget. So if you'd like to learn more about that, Sam will post a link in the chat now for you to go follow that. So thank you so much, Candid Community, for sponsoring. Okay, for just a little bit of house rules. As we go through the session, you're welcome to ask any of your questions. Pop them in the question feature at the bottom of your screen. If you're in here live today, you'll see there's like a little bubble with the question mark. If you click on that, you can post any of your questions. Because at the end, we've got a segment that's called Fix or Flop, where we will be going into whatever your scenario is and getting some feedback or suggestions or ideas from Darnell. Okay, and last bit to know, this is going to be recorded, and the recording will be available on YouTube, Spotify, and the Candid Community for any of our members. Okay, so let's dive in. Welcome, Darnell. You know that we don't do any boring bios here, so I would love it if you could pop on your mic and tell us, where are you from, what business or businesses do you run, and what is your gut reaction when someone says marketing systems?
Yeah, so happy to be here with y'all. Thanks for the introduction, Cans. Yeah, it's great to be a part of this and to be the inaugural kind of presenter for Scrappy Systems. So yes, I'm over here. I'm based in North Carolina in the Huntersville area, which is near Charlotte, probably one of the most popular cities. This is for, depending on where you're watching this. So I'm on New York time zone, and was originally born in Chicago, which is in the Central Time Zone, 1 hour behind here. Yeah, so I operate, as you've probably seen in the marketing, as a creative polymath and a community builder. And I really have like three different businesses, so to speak, or three different capacities in which I work. One is my longest standing one. It's through Bulletproof Hustle, which I describe as basically one-to-one fractional work. So doing brand strategy, design, consulting, copywriting, a whole slew of different creative disciplines. That's my bread and butter. It's a lot of high touch, high proximity work. Secondly, we have Forge. And it was through that context how Candice and I had met. I think that was roughly a year ago, around the time that we met, by both being fellow community builders. And so with our community in Forge, it enables creative entrepreneurs to grow their impact, ingenuity, and income without sacrificing their wellness or their worth in our distraction-free growth lab. And then lastly, my wife and I, we have a cruelty-free skincare line called Natalia. She's French Canadian. She's a master esthetician, and she wanted us to build something together. And so I look at it as helping out with everything on the outside of the bottle, and her with everything on the inside, product development, formulas, all of that good stuff. And I'm kind of doing the branding element. And then somehow I have to make it look all effortless and like I'm not doing a million things at once. But I don't wake up like this. It's just like 17 years of doing it for that long. Lastly, to answer your question, Cans, when it comes to my gut response when someone mentions marketing systems, it's bittersweet. Like, I have different thoughts about it, but the ones that come to mind are for sure, like automation, workflows, complexity, fanciness, bells and whistles. Those are the things that come to mind most immediately that I associate when someone mentions marketing systems. And last, I would say amplification. So that would mean what would take you like days to do one to one if you just like went person to person and tried to say, hey, this is what I do, and do you want to work together? Like a good marketing system would help you amplify that and streamline that and do that in like a fraction of the time. So those are my answers to those questions.
I love that. I feel like it's such a positive response to marketing systems, whereas like a lot of people can get quite a negative emotional reaction to thinking, what is a marketing system? How big does it have to be? And I suppose being positioned between at the intersection of quite a few businesses and different businesses, that must put you in quite an interesting position to experiment and play around and test out different things.
1000%. Because you're trying to figure out how to essentially be able to scale your time or multiply your skill sets across different clients, across different needs that will come up. And sometimes you are hired in capacities where you're helping people with their own marketing system. So it forces you to do your due diligence, your research, and say, well, what makes the most sense for what this client needs, and how robust or lightweight can we make this particular marketing system? So it gives you a lot of room for just like experimentation on, wow, there is no one size fits all thing. It's really dependent upon goals relative to what one's existing systems are. And then you have to appease the client as well. So just because you present it or consult on it or advise it doesn't mean that it'll ever get used. Like they could discard with that. So yeah.
That is actually such an interesting point. And I think the reason why I want to host this series is that many of the people attending today, they are working on their own. They don't have any other clients to jump in and just look at how they've done it or experiment in those different ways. So because you've got into play in so many different fields, what would you say has been your best performing marketing system that you've built?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I would say I have an interesting answer to this, but my answer really starts with my best performing marketing system is a job well done. And by that, I mean like nothing performs better than if you have wowed an existing client. It both retains that client, so now your acquisition costs are lower because you don't probably have to duplicate that. And they end up doing the selling for you. So they become your marketing system because they're referring you business on their own merit without you ever asking. So a job well done, like for sure. Best performing marketing tactic for sure. But like if it comes to systems, I think going a layer underneath that, Candice, is going to be about my specific and spicy blend of curiosity, of empathy, of integrity, and professionalism. Like all of that are the things that make me who I am beyond the tangible deliverable that I'm providing. So if I've been hired to like rewrite a website, just as an example, well, with the AI element, that has largely been commoditized. So if a client is still paying you thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars even to rewrite something that they could probably lean on Chatty for, just as an example, you know you got something special. You know that you're doing something that matters, and you got to tap into what that is. So that's like my second level answer to that question. And then underneath that, if we're talking about actual systems or tools, if everything has to feed, okay, well, what does a job well done look like for me? The best marketing tools are the ones that support that help me perform at that level. And so when I was thinking about Scrappy Systems as a whole, and looking at my tools, I already have a pretty slim tech stack compared to most people. But the ones that I thought about for this particularly would involve Calendly, MailerLite, and Typeform. You've probably heard of all three, or have used some of those. But those are three of the ones that I fancy quite the most. They do help me perform at the highest rate because almost every time someone has access to my Calendly links, like a call is scheduled, and that's a conversion just in terms of like what that tool is designed to do. So like conversion rate is like super high when it comes to that. Almost every time I send that out, 99.9% of the time, some person's going to book it. So it's a great tool to have, like from a performance standpoint, like probably the highest one. And then with MailerLite, I was looking at my open rates and they are around 49%. I have around 660 something people on my email list, and it's been that way for probably around, on average, up and down for the last year or so. And so I have that rate, and then the click-through rate changes depending on if I have a campaign or not. Sometimes I write emails with nothing to click on in them, so that would be a 0% click-through rate. So I'm just looking at the open rates really. And then I know with VideoAsk, which is made by Typeform, like that helps me begin to build that know, like, and trust factor with people because of the asynchronous exchange when they visit my website.
Fair. Can you explain a little bit about how it works, that it helps you do those underlying things of build the relationship, like you were saying?
Yeah, sure. So Calendly is going to be around, okay, well, finding those perfect times to meet between two or more parties, and like how everything was before Calendly. Oh, Candace, you want to meet? Okay, boom. Well, now we got to find a time. We might send 10 emails like to meet virtually just to get to know one another, just as an example. But now, like, it's just like, no, okay, you can see my calendar. I can make it available or whatever I want you to see around my calendar, and then you can pick what works for you. So that I love that solves the problem of like finding the time to meet while not having to send all of those emails. So like time efficiency goes way up. And then if I can have those multiple event types in my account, so okay, Candace gets this type of calendar, or I'm only sending this out because she's this type of person, and it doesn't conflict with all of my other calendars, so I don't got to think about that. There's no scheduling conflicts anymore. There is no notifications. It allows, I think, that part of meeting, of setting a designated point in time and in space to be like as effortless as possible on both parties. And I just love that tool, like in that way. And I think and we talked about this before, I think this was last year, Candace, around like that side benefit of having something like Calendly is, well, it low key is also helping me grow my list, because I have a question on there talking about, well, okay, just as a simple example, well, I appreciate you filling out this form. To thank you, I'd love to, send you some value that you might find in your inbox and stuff. Is it okay to do that, just as an example? And then if I do get that permission, it's like, boom, wow, you're growing my list. And that's not something that I thought about using that tool in that way, like when I first started using it. But that's like another kind of challenge it has of like, well, how do you ask someone to join your list in a way that feels right to them, but at the right point of that interaction? Because you haven't met them yet, but if you've provided enough value and shown enough professionalism prior to the point of sending your link, most of the time they're going to be okay with that.
Yeah. I actually think that is one of the most genius pieces of marketing I have ever seen. And it like you said, your calendar is one of the highest converting channels because people go there because they want to talk to you. And if you get a permission to add them to your list, it works. I'm not gonna lie, I stole that tip from you last year, and it has been the main driver that's grown the Candid mailing list. Because I have so many events and so many meetings. It is kind of how I do my business. I love the networking element of it. And so many people, they sign up, and if I ask them why, they're basically like, oh, I wanted to learn more before we got on a call together. And it was so easy to learn more because you made it easy to just subscribe right there. So that is really, really genius. and video
It's
ask,
so
I'm very
small.
curious.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that. But like to your point, that can't be understated because Candace, I don't even know if the folks at Calendly thought of using that tool in that way, because you got to think about it. Depending on what that event type is that is in your Calendly account, you might have like 5 questions that you're asking them to qualify them for why they're speaking with you. So in my example, if it's your equivalent, Candace, of a networking call, I'm asking like 3 different questions. I'm asking about like how they identify professionally, like solopreneur, side hustle, traditional employment, like what it is, and it's multiple choice. Obviously, it's already asking their name and email address. And I'm asking for like, okay, is there a place I can review their website or their LinkedIn page? Like, how can I connect with them? And then at the end of that, like that's when I ask about the email list. And I'm always trying to think about like a spicy way to ask that question so that it doesn't feel like super clinical. Like, you want to subscribe to my list, because that probably is not going to work on people and stuff these days, because I don't think anyone is going to want to join a list for the sake of joining it. So you got to think of something spicier than that, or keep it conversational or light. But one way that you could do that is just like, if you have multiple questions on there, like use it as almost like a thank you tool, like incentivizing them to say, well, thank you for giving me all this information. How about I send you, my this 20-page guideline that I probably sell or something on my website, but you can get it for free, just as an example. So they're getting, it's like a lead magnet, and you've qualified them through their questionnaire. You're providing them with value right there in the moment, and then you're growing your list. So
I've actually
anyway.
heard that called a reverse lead magnet, where someone gives you their details and only afterwards do you go, you know what, here's a gift for you. And it really delivers that like initial punch of like taste of value immediately, and they feel like they didn't have to do anything for it, and it doesn't feel like a slimy upsell, which sometimes it can feel like.
Right. Yeah, Scrappy Systems, man. Scrappy Systems. And we'll get into more of all of this, where I think it all ties together, like how my tools help, and how I think they can work for our viewers and listeners and stuff as well too. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You were asking about VideoAsk. You said
Yes. I'm very curious how you use VideoAsk, because I've heard of it. I haven't really figured out a good use case on how it like can help me with my marketing. So I'm very curious how you use it.
Man, I look, I'm the opposite as you. Like, I can't think of ways not to use it. I can't think of ways. It's like I can find a gazillion. So my main one is right there on my website, where I am essentially using it like, okay, imagine going to the store, Candace, and you're going to the clothing store to pick up a dress or a pair of jeans. And your interaction, it's a store that you've never been to before, but you're like, my friend told me about this place, I'm going to go to the store. And if you have a person that greets you at the door to say, hey, nice to meet you, what brings you in today? And you're like, I'm looking for a pair of jeans, I'm looking for this occasion and stuff, and they guide you to it, like that's probably going to give you a good impression about that store, rather than you arriving there at the door and the person is on their phone, like at the register or something like that, no greeting whatsoever, no help. Because here in the States, like, they are notorious for when you do need their help with something, like you can't find an employee to help you to put on a pair of shoes. But when you're there, they are just window shopping. You can't get them off their back. They're popping up every few seconds. You need help. Do you need help? Blah blah blah. So anyway, I've looked at my VideoAsk for my website in a very similar fashion. Like, however a person landed there, my goal is to guide them through my site, rather than leaving them to their own devices to find what they need to. This is even more extreme if you're not a solopreneur, or you're a solopreneur that offers many different things. You got 5 different packages. You got 5 different ways for people to contact you. You got normal videos on your page, resources, blogs, etc. You don't know how a person lands there. But if you could, the very first thing that they see this nice welcoming video of all this enthusiasm and all of this energy and stuff at once. And I'm just like, hey, well, what's up? What brings you here? I'm Darnell. Nice to meet you. And by the way, what brings you here today? And I got a question, and I got like 5 different responses that you can click on. And depending on that, Candace, I'm guiding you logically with pre-recorded videos of where you can go to on that site. That's just one use case scenario. So And I think it's the one, Candace, that most of us can relate to is like, if you have a pretty decent sized website or you offer multiple services, you have multiple lead magnets happening, you got a lot going on your website. If you could guide a person from when they visit you, from that very first interaction, they haven't seen video used in this way at many times before, but I get to choose my own adventure, because while I'm on Candace's website, I could be wanting to join her community. I could be wanting to have a discovery call with her. I could be wanting to get this product. True, I could look around through her links, but I'm telling you, we're in kind of an attention deficit age of AI element where you really got to grab people's attention like within 5 seconds. But if you see a video, and if I show up turned up like this, the likelihood of you not watching that for those 10 seconds, no matter what you do from that point on, because we can see the analytics of whether or not a person drops off or not, you're already changing the game. Most people are not using stuff in that way because I don't know if people would think, like we said, we might not have particular ways that we can use it. Like, that's just one of them. I'm using it. That single video ask is both qualifying people. It is showing them where they can go to my website to find what they need quicker than leaving them to their own device. And I'm building significant know, like, and trust factor instantaneously, because you get to see my energy, my mannerisms. You can see whether or not I even believe the things that I'm saying right there on camera. And you can see a face behind the brand. You know I'm not an AI bot. Like, all of that is registering subconsciously in the visitor's mind, in my opinion. That's just one use case for that. I'm using it for surveys. I'm using it so like, instead of sending a traditional survey, I can use video in my forms at the same time and say, yeah, this Scrappy Systems event, did you like it? Like, boom, boom, boom. And if you didn't, like, you can pick, or we can set a meeting and stuff after the fact. You can respond to that video ask by video or audio yourself. It's really good for asynchronous communication, but it feels like you're right there with them. But you can use it at the end of an event. You can use it midway through an event. It's so many different cool use cases.
That is amazing. I'm even like thinking like the implications for like community onboarding. Like, if you could build your onboarding with VideoAsk, like, oh, my brain's exploding. That is amazing.
You know, I already started doing it. You already know I started doing it. I already started.
How do you use it in your onboarding?
Well, I'm starting to now, but so similar to you, it's going to be probably at the end of my probably at the end of the course that people go to when they come into. So like at the end of the mini course, it would be something that is going to allow me to gain more insights from them as they enter the community, such as, just as an example, like my mini course, my welcome mini course doesn't cover like what brought them there or is designed to ask them that question. But if they've went through the mini course, and then at the end, I'm like, okay, you know, what brought you here? And they can see me asking that question, and I can create how I want them to respond to that. So I'm going to be using it essentially, Candace, for probably more insights at the point of like why they are feeling that fresh. So what brought you here? Did anyone kind of refer you? Like, what do you understand about this? How can Forge serve you? Just as an example, like some of those questions that we may traditionally ask in our versions of like our say hi space, like I can just do that through onboarding, but have it at the tail end. So that's how I plan to do it.
That's amazing. And I guess like you also mentioned earlier that like doing a good job is like the best performing marketing system. I guess doing a good job and then having something like Typeform at the end to help with testimonials also is a pretty good use of that tool. Do you use, is that what you use for testimonial, or is that how you use Typeform? How does Typeform come into your system?
Yeah, so Typeform comes in a couple of different ways, similar to VideoAsk, and now they seem to be blurring the lines between both of those products, which in my opinion is a good look. Anyway, but as two separate products, like I use it definitely at the end of experiences. I use Typeform probably more for that than at the beginning of an experience, but I could be using them both. I could. And now with the video element, it's just like I'm thinking about, similar to what we're talking about now, like spicy ways to like how to introduce people to what I want them to know in my orbit relative to which business I'm doing. And then on the tail end, I'm trying to gather insights, but in a very conversational manner, because that's their big thing. And that's part of their brand, is like, you don't want to have your surveys and quizzes be sterile. or very robotic or anything. Like, how can you flavor it with your particular personality, your style of doing things, and then keep it light and conversational so that you don't always have to offer a $50 Amazon gift card for them to fill out your survey, just as an example, right? Because if your form could be good on its own merits, if it was well designed, if it showed a person a question at a time, if you can recall information earlier that they gave you from like 5 questions ago using conditional logic, then Candace, it begins to feel like a real conversation. Like you can't there's a window now just between both sides, and it's a clear window that you can see. The technology kind of disappears and it feels like you're having a one-to-one conversation. So something as simple, in my opinion, Candace, is like showing you only one question at a time at the point that you're at it. And it can recall that, okay, Candace told me her name was Candace 5 questions ago. And at this particular point in the conversation, I feel like it's good to recall that because that's what I would do in a normal conversation with her. So just different things like that. But that's one way.
That's beautiful. I think I need to. It would be amazing. You should do. I think you have done a masterclass on Typeform before,
Two of
actually.
them. Two of them.
Two
Two of
of
them so
them.
far. Two of them so far.
Amazing. I need to go and watch those because I think I've been a little bit like me and my little Notion form. Like I'm just like, this is very useful. Like it works, but it doesn't deliver the experience that you're talking about. And I think that's often underestimated, especially when you're a solopreneur and you're rushing. It's just like, I just need a form. I just want answers. And then no one fills in your forms and you don't get any data and you can't actually make any educated decisions. And you keep going in this like spiral of like, I don't know what they want. I'm going to guess. I don't know what they want because you don't really know how to ask for it. Was there like, what made you get to a point where you realized these like, asking like finding a tool like this is important? Like did you have a bad experience that you thought like you have to do this, or did you just kind of fall into it by accident and start playing around?
More of the latter than the former, surprisingly, because I was like researching Typeform, and then I saw a product that said VideoAsk. I was like, "What's that about?" And then when I clicked on the page, I was like the angels were like, "Oh!" Like the sky parted, and I felt like I heard angelic voices after that because I just immediately got it. Now, granted, I'm in branding anyway, so like when I just see good storytelling as a whole or good branding, I'm already a fan of it. Like I'm the person that's going to go to the winery and buy a wine because I like the design of the label, even if it tastes crappy. Like I still think that there's merit in someone designed this. Someone thinks that they have the best grapes and they decided to crush these grapes and put it in a bottle. I think there's merit in everything. So anyway, I'm very forgiving. So when I saw that it was just like asynchronous conversations, and I was just like, man, I haven't seen that before. Like man, you're trying to meet with people, so to speak, that who live all over the world in all these different time zones, and your website is kind of like your 24/7 store. So I'm like, anything that I could do to, multiple ways to use it. Like I could just qualify people, or I could just guide them towards certain products. But if you can combine them both, and now you start to get into, like for me, Candace, it just immediately clicked. It was just like, at the end of the day, I'm trying to lower the trust barrier between myself and the visitor who came to my website, regardless of how they landed there or what they're there for. And lowering that trust barrier and making it simple for them to like decide that Darnell is someone that I want to work with or someone that I don't in the least amount of time. I'm all about that. So the best marketing tool, which that's one of them, helps you kind of parse out all of that so that if people join your list or they buy your product and they've came from something like a VideoAsk, then you know that that's a high converting tool for you, and B, it is doing a lot of work for you that even can take, Candace, away from some of the stuff that you might ask traditionally in a discovery call. Like that's another good way to use it. Imagine like your discovery call process, the same questions that you usually get asked, or your same auditing experience for whatever you do as a solopreneur. For some of y'all on watching this, so imagine the same 10 questions that you always ask, but now you can automate that, but it's like having the automation element and the humanity like working in complete harmony together, because you can send that to them And then if they want to have a subsequent call for you, like now you know that they're ultimately serious. Really, they just got a question that you didn't answer in that, and they're ready to spend money with you usually. So now you're saving more time. You can do that type of stuff at scale. And I can use it when I want to be like really fancy and stuff. So for example, if you were, I don't know, a representative at a larger company that I'm like really trying to get business and stuff from, like I would totally send you like a specific video ask that's calling you out by name and like really try to impress you, or even handle that conversation, Candice, like a lot asynchronously. So I might answer questions that you're looking for a brand strategist for your particular client and stuff. And instead of me sending in a traditional resume, I might use that in addition to the resume and just say, I appreciate the opportunity, et cetera. And if you still got any questions, like you can respond, because you got to get spicy with this stuff, y'all. You got to be. Again, with this AI element, this age of AI, it's good for a lot of things, but that humanity side of things, and the more that you do that, and the more that you distinguish yourself, if that becomes rarer, it is more valuable because it is harder to get now. So the times that you do it, it really stands out.
I really love that. Like, especially as a small business owner, or if you're working by yourself, like you don't have a massive budget. You have to find those spicy tricks that are unique, that like make people go, oh wow, I haven't seen that before, or that's actually, I feel connected. Like I've had so many people come to me saying they hate discovery calls because
Ooh. Wait,
just
are you talking about like your peers or clients hate them? Which
clients,
person? Oh,
clients.
clients. Oh, okay.
Yes, like people who are newly into the consulting side hustling space and really trying to like figure out how do they build their pipeline. They kind of want to avoid the discovery call, and that's almost impossible. So I think if you're not the kind of person who really likes to be on camera or like having an on the spot conversation, especially if it feels like a job interview, because I think sometimes they can. You probably need to change how you're doing discovery calls, but at least you can find tools that make it easier for you to get to your end goal rather than like just pushing through the pain constantly and maybe like making it feel like a horrible experience.
1,000%. If I was one of those people that you described, like that would probably be the way that I would be most serious about using a tool like that. And to be fair, VideoAsk got competitors as well too, but they're my favorite, so that's the only one I'll talk about. But there are other companies that specialize, Candice, in asynchronous communication. So that's what that category is called. But for sure, if you don't like doing discovery calls, record you some snippets of the types of things that you just need to parse out from them in your own personality and style, such as, well, how would you like me to rewrite your website, or do you already have copy there? And they can click on that and continue to provide that data, and then you can review that at your own convenience. But it's just like that allows you to scale. This way, Candice, you can just do the discovery call once technically, and the person isn't even on the other end. And then you can record those videos in completely different settings. You can say, I'm going to record 3 questions right now. I'm going to go have some lunch, a wine, a cigar, something like that. Come back and record the other 3,
On your time, like
on your
really
time.
to suit your thing. That's amazing. And I want to really talk about the results, because I think it's one thing to say like, yes, relationship building matters, but it's difficult to sometimes understand why building a relationship and going about like using tools that optimize for that is important. Like, since you've been using these kinds of tools, or adapting the tools to really help you build relationships, what are the like tangible results that you can say you're getting for your business or businesses?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. I guess the tangible results. Uh, so I'm like, well, I'm trying to think of how best to answer that question, because, of course, it depends on what the goal is. Because if the goal is to grow my email list versus grow my clientele base, I'm going to be using probably a different tech stack for those things. But we'll go by the example of like, okay, cash in hand, something has wowed a consumer or a client to the degree that they're ready to do business together. I think Yeah, the tangible results is probably, gonna be based off of, well, did these tools do what they needed to do, and how much interaction did I need to have with this client face to face in real time, uh, to convert them, to like completely win them, just as an example. So if it is, for instance, a cold client, so we have no connection together, they may have found me from a keyword online, so like the highest possible person to convert, and they wanted my most optimal package, and it only took them like VideoAsk and Calendly to do it. Like that's kind of like the holy grail of it all, unless you offer a service where you actually need to customize things relative to what you learn from them. But even then, in my opinion, you could still gather that data asynchronously. But the thing is, it's just like it is all based on what my goals are at the time. And I do think our time is our most valuable asset. We all know that. So where we spend it is critical. So I need my tools to sell uh, my professionalism, my style, my behavior, all of that asynchronously for me, and then get the client comfortable enough to feel like whatever next steps happen, that they are seamless, that they don't have to sign up to all of these additional accounts to do business with me. And it maybe feels like just one or two things. And ultimately, I think the highest converting things are the ones where kind of the technology for the most part disappears, where it just feels like you're having a natural conversation with them, and they feel comfortable working with you, but they can't tell that they've done all of these different steps. It just feels natural. And so that means asking for the credit card at the right point in that progress, at the right point in that process, where they feel that they've given you enough data to understand what they need, and you have given them enough of a comfort level to know that you're the right person to help them. And then you need to make it easy for them to do business with you. So I think it's actually the fewest amount of tools as possible.
Mm.
And when I deploy my Calendly, because I think that was going on to early in this conversation, usually uh, that is a high converting tool and stuff for me when it comes to my one-to-one projects. Usually if I'm on a discovery call with people, most of the time that's through inbound marketing in the first place. So they are pretty they're aware that they need help, and they do want to work together, rather than me reaching out to them and just magically trying to win their business. So there's a connection point early in. I think those are, what we call probably being in the warm network or referred business, which just helps with the process.
Of course.
So
And interesting. I know it's not necessarily a time for question now, but Zakir just asked a question, which I'm going to spotlight. Was there a big difference in how many clients you got when you started using VideoAsk?
yeah, I appreciate this question. And so yeah, so a big difference in how many clients I got when I started using it. Um, Yeah, I would say so, and especially with the combination of those trainings that I did, because those were people who knew about VideoAsk or were familiar with it, but didn't know how to use that tool, kind of like you, Candice. So it's like people that saw you and it was like, and they saw how I used the tool, like from my actual VideoAsk, and they're like, I want that. Can you help me out with a storytelling strategy for that? So it ended up becoming kind of a, a business line somewhat, from on a meta level of like helping people who were interested in using the tool but for their business, but they needed help setting it all up. But then for the people who don't identify as that, like some people that weren't familiar with the tool but they just like interacted with it, yeah, I would say that it has been as high converting as referred business is, from people who might have just landed on it, say from my LinkedIn page, and we might have one or two connections between us. And so I'm always using my tools in interesting ways depending on the season of business that I'm in. And so sometimes I'm promoting certain things rather than others, or I'm highlighting them. When it comes to the brand strategy, working at high touch point stuff, it is a very tailored thing where there may be a discovery call needed, but I really do try to handle that asynchronously for the most part. But yeah, video ads, like, for sure. People have even responded, because that's another big thing that I teach about in that training, is like people will end up mirroring the way that you interact with them. So when they see you using video or using audio, like, people often respond that way, or they'll send you a video ask back and be like, I was looking for this service, or I have this need, but I don't see it covered here. But can you send me a quote, or can we catch up with a call, just as an example?
And I think also one thing that's worth noting is, like, something like that doesn't, like, success isn't always finding clients. Sometimes it is dissuading the wrong clients from coming forward. And I think the way you've described it, like having a very clear journey of, like, guiding people to the services they need, if you can meet them and really help them go, actually, you don't solve my problem, you're probably saving yourself and them a lot of time in the long run. And I think that's honestly one of the most expensive things to buy back, is your time. So as far as tangible results, if you can win more time, that just is beautiful.
I think that you made an incredible point with that, about dissuading the people who aren't a good fit for you and not wasting anyone's time, which ironically could win you more business by that person that you weren't a perfect fit for in the future, just because, like, they have a better idea of what you do, even though it's not for them, it's for somebody that they do know. And so that has also happened in my line of work. It's like, the fact that you have put something together that impresses people to that degree, and they say, well, man, Candace, I really like this, and I really like her, and I don't need what she has, but I could come across someone who does in my near future, and I'm going to remember this video ask that she put together. It could be that. And so, like, you always want to still leave a good impression for people, but to your point, dissuade the people who aren't a good fit for you, even for yourself, like to save you the headache of working with a micromanager or a super meticulous person, or just someone who's just not values aligned with you. So these are ways to really have kind of the pre-discovery call before the discovery call in just one of those use cases.
Love it. Thank you so much, Darnell. It's time for us to move into our last segment of the evening, but before, or the afternoon in your case.
Yeah.
We do. I just wanted to say, anyone in the room, if you've used any of these tools, if you've considered using any of these tools, tell us in the chat. It would be lovely to know if you've even had some ideas sparked of how you would like to use some of the tools we've spoken about today. Okay, let me breathe. That was a lot of words. Okay, so it's time for our interactive segment, which, as I said, we're calling Flop or Fix. And this is where the audience members submit their marketing struggles, and we can troubleshoot them with them based on your experience. Okay, so we've got one question. We've got some questions that were submitted offline, but we have one also from Zakir tonight. Thank you for all your questions. Let's spotlight that. Okay, Darnell, he said, I started my new business and I don't feel like I have systems in place at the moment. Where should I start when building my systems?
Ooh, I love this question. And I am, Candace, you might even agree with me, because we are the same sign after all. We have many similarities, but this is a good question, just because it gets you to reflect on who you were at the beginning. So firstly, you want to, like, I am already looking back in my past 17 years ago when I first leaped out there on my own back in 2008, and what I would do differently, because you want to save people time that you come across and stuff, Candace. That's why you built this community of, like, here are the tools to help things be more efficient. And so I always believe, where should you start with building your systems, is starting with the end in mind, really starting with, well, what is my actual goal with them? And I think that, okay, well, winning business, that's a broad goal, and we all want to do that. So it needs to be something more specific than that. And so, for example, if a person is just starting out, or like I was, my big thing at that time, Zakir and Candace, was like exposure and earning, like, awareness, basically, because I recognize that if I just got out here in this game and no one has heard of me, they need to know, like, and trust me first, and they need to be aware of what it is that I do. So there's an information and an education exchange that needs to be done. They don't know who I am from anyone off the street. So look at what the end goal is. Well, we all want business, but before that, they need to be aware of you and they need to feel comfortable with you. There needs to be no like and trust factor built. So anything that you could do when it comes to systems that are aiding that effort, in the example of if you're just coming out there and no one knows who you are, that's where I would start with it. It's just like, well, what's a tangible goal? Well, I want, 100 people this month to know that I exist and that I am a website designer. Just as an example, I want them to know that I do website design for fintech, and I need the people who would hire me for that to know who I am and that I exist. And what do I need to inform them of to make them feel comfortable in working with me? So, and then it becomes about reverse engineering that from that point forward, of really getting them comfortable with you, recognizing that you can do what needs to be done. And if you don't have any samples or anything in your portfolio to prove it, then you probably got to set up some spec work. So it could be, well, I'm going to redesign spec pages, just as an example, for like the 10 biggest fintech companies out there, just so I have something to show people that showcases my skills. And I would make that a part of my marketing system actually as well too, if that makes sense. Like I need to showcase my portfolio. And I need to make it easy for them to book a call if I need to learn more about them. Just as an example of like some of those things that I would be thinking about as part of my system. But that's the short answer, is just like, well, starting with the end in mind, being hyper specific about what do I want my marketing system to do, and finding the right tools that aid that effort, but that also keep your goal in mind as the central kind of North Star. Because the marketing system that's just out there just to be using it, I mean, you're just going to waste time and money and add needless complexity for the people that you need to be reaching.
Really smart. Starting at the end. Oh, and I suppose also from the beginning, your system is literally like where you build on it as you go. It gets more and more complex. You don't have to start out and have the most complex thing. So if you're at least getting the goal that you're trying to get, so like getting people to book a call, or then like that end state, you can start building your systems on there and optimizing it those are my favorite parts, just optimizing it.
got to optimize. You got to, for sure.
Well, we got one question offline, which I'm very keen to ask you about. So one of our members, Margaret, has had a situation in her community where her systems were not, she was still, learning to use Circle, and her systems had a bit of a slip where some people got through and ended up not not paying a full membership fee. Their trial didn't work, and she didn't have the automation set up to remove them. So she wanted to know, like, her question was, I was going to ask how you'd approach the folks that got in without a subscription. She's figured out why it happened and fixed it, but there are 15 people that need to be contacted. Would you just say, oops, my bad? And if you want to continue, subscribe or offer a membership at a discount, like, how do you account for a failure in your system, and then going to approach people with it?
I love this question. I appreciate this question from Margaret. What immediately came to me when you asked that question to me, Candace, was that if possible, the best thing that you can do is get ahead of this before it comes out. It's kind of like that old idiom where, like, if you're in the world of news and politics, just as an example, and like a scandal or something is about to come out, like your PR team is going to try to get ahead of it like before then and be proactive about that before like it gets leaked, or before like people start coming out with all of this news. So similarly, I think if you can proactively deal with this before someone else calls you out on it, like that's going to already come off as just being hyper professional and even a bit empathetic as well, to like to the point where, okay, well, you've gotten ahead of this, so you're already, by the act of messaging them, you're starting to rectify that. And then in terms of how you go about that, I think with a large degree of just accepting the accountability, like you said, it happened on your side, nothing that they did particularly, but to just inform them that, hey, this is a paid community, and you know, you may not have noticed, or you may have, but you were never charged. But on our front end for the page, or however you got in here, it was clear that this is a paid community. So if that does exist in Margaret's case, that there was messaging somewhere on the front end that made it clear as day that this was a paid system, then I don't think that those 15 people are going to have an issue of that, unless those are unethical people or you got a troll or something in there. I think that you're simply just reminding them that it is a paid community, not something that shouldn't have been obvious to them from the forefront. But that's what I would actionably do, Margaret, which is I get in front of it ASAP. So like send them a message before someone reaches out to you, or even worse, another community member somehow notices that, hey, I paid to be here and this person didn't, because that could also happen, and you don't want to deal with that. That just opens up more problems. So get ahead of it ASAP. Probably message each of them individually. You could automate it and use a tool like VideoAsk and explain it all or something, or not even that tool, but just a video or something of anything. But hey man, this was our system's fault. I take complete accountability for that. But this is a paid community, and you know, because it was my mistake and you've already been in here for free for a little bit, I will give you, just as an example, another week to decide if you want to remain here or not, just so that you have ample time, even though you've already been here for free for this long, just to sweeten the deal for them, to let them know that you care, that you're in the right place, that you're really making it hard for them to leave something that they have gotten so much value out of so quickly, and it was free for them because they basically got an extended trial. That's the way I would approach dealing with that, me personally.
I think that's smart. Not giving more discounts, because at that point you also don't want to devalue your community. It was a mistake. It is. I think being accountable is also, and accountable to your members is some of the best way to build a relationship, because that actually builds trust, because they know that you're going to have the hard or uncomfortable conversation with them and walk through it and hold them in that space, you know, and like make it easy for them to come out of that space. Because also, as a member who maybe hasn't paid, you might feel bad realizing, oh, I haven't paid, and you don't know how to mention it, you know. So I think that that's always a really good point. Thank you, Darnell.
And the super last thing that I'll say to that is exactly what you said at the end there, which is almost like, it feels like having people in, if you're the landlord and you got people paying, like in a house that they're not paying rent for, the worst thing that you can do in that moment, even if you're proactive dealing with it, say, okay, well, you're out of the community right here in this moment. So unfortunately, you probably still do have to incentivize them in some way, because it would be really bad if you just showed up and be like, hey, you didn't pay to be here. And by the way, you only got until 11:59 p.m. tonight to like actually pay, or I'm sorry, but like, because that don't feel right. So it's just like, well, what would help you? Like, what's the human thing to do? What is the empathetic way to handle that? And usually that's the right way to, in my opinion.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, we are roundabout at the end and we don't have any more questions, but in the chat I can see you have swayed quite a few people, especially about VideoAsk. Like, it's at the top of a few people's lists now to go.
Oh, I haven't even looked in the chat at all. I totally forgot to open that, but it allowed me to stay focused and deliver value. But yeah. I still haven't looked at it, but yes, please continue, Candice.
Intentional. It's so good to be intentional. Well, I suppose I may as well wrap up Scrappy Systems, our very first one, with Darnell Brown. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, Darnell, for letting us behind the scenes and seeing just how you really run simple. I wouldn't even say these are scrappy. These are very like scrappy in a very like clever resourceful way and very spicy as well, a spicy way of doing your marketing. So I would really love it if you can tell the audience, tell everybody what you're working on right now, where they can find you online and learn more about you.
Yes, I will do that. I will do that. And with I'm gonna just lastly say in 30 seconds, because I do want to leave people with this before telling them about the links. Because I think one thing that they can leave with, Candice, in terms of like something that they can steal that I do, and I have been alluding to it this whole time, which is that I see this whole thing about as storytelling, and I really see it as like, especially as a solopreneur, that it's best to think of attracting your audience members in the same way that you would like in the dating world or a dating experience. So marketing is just storytelling, but amplified, but also magnified because it's with specific people. People like to feel bigger than a part of something bigger than themselves, but also like they're the only person in the room. So if I'm trying to do business with Candice, and we've never worked together or something before, like how can I make this as conversational and as natural as we would be like dating as friends, just as an example, getting to know one another, like to going from associates to becoming friends. I think business relationships, a lot of those same kind of triggers end up applying. They got to feel comfortable with you. They don't want to marry you on the first date. So maybe they don't want to do business with you or buy your highest item, but they might be cool getting a charcuterie board, just as an example. So I always tell people to think about it as like you're courting or trying to date and see if you're a good fit for one another, especially if you're a solo practitioner providing service to like a single client or an agency. So that's like something I think that anyone can leave with, is to think about, well, how would it feel if you were dating or trying to get someone to be attracted to you, or let them know that you're interested in them? Because that's the business version of it. You're trying to attract customers to you, and they do need to like you. Okay, so after that, Jim, people can find me really in just a few places. So my LinkedIn profile, do you need me to copy and put in the link? Are you good? So you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me as well. My main website is darnellbrown.com, spelled just like my name. And then lastly, in my Forge community, those are really the places you can find me. And I have a podcast that's being retooled at this time. It'll be called Forge and Flow, and it'll be for creative entrepreneurs as well, giving them these tips and bite-sized insights from my 17-year journey as a creative polymath. So those are some of the places you can find me. I try to keep it simple for you. And then on darnellbrown.com is where you can see my video ask. It's a few years old, but it's a high converting one. So just to see an example, if you want to get some inspiration.
Thank you so much, Darnell. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody for joining us here today for the Scrappy Systems. I am very chuffed and very excited for all of these going forward. If you would like, you can join us in the Candid community, and we'll be hosting these every month with more awesome entrepreneurs like Darnell, who we can learn from and grow with, and hopefully find some really cool new tool tips if you're like me. We're relaunching the membership packages next month, which is next week. So that's really exciting. We'll pop the waitlist in the chat if you want to find out more about that. And then also just a reminder that we're hosting the next Scrappy Systems with Jamiro Emming, who is a professional freelancer, graphic designer, and AI extraordinaire. The way he saves time with AI blows my mind every time. So don't forget to register. The link is in the chat. And thank you all once again for your time. Darnell, it's been amazing as always. You're more than welcome whenever you would like to come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well, Candice. Thank you so much. You know you're the best. You already know what it is. You already know you're the best. You probably wake up every morning like, I'm the best. I'm the best. I got this. Maybe do a little dance or something in there too.
I should actually choreograph one of those. I think it would make it like easier to get out of bed, not just like slump over like, where's my coffee? I'm not this sprightly very early in the morning. I need a couple of coffees first.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much,
too.
everyone, for joining. Cheers.